Now in this video, we're going to go through an amazing transformation that one of my online students made, which was going from extremely steep in the downswing with no rotation going through the golf ball to getting really shallow and turning through the golf ball amazingly. So we're going to dive into this and we're going to go in depth of the lesson and then really talk about the differences what we kind of tweaked about to really get this massive change that a lot of you are going to be able to apply and get some really good results to as well. So I'm Jonathan Chan with JChownGolf. Let's dive right into it. So if you've been watching a lot on my channel, you know I preach about having the variables in your golf swing in an appropriate spot to be able to allow rotation to happen in the downswing. And this before and after of one of my online students on Skillest is that prime example of it. Because we went from steep, no rotation, flip, to shallow, really nice free flowing rotation and a good exit left around the body. So let's dive into a side-by-side analysis here that is in our online lesson app Skillest that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about the differences and then we're going to talk about something that you can all apply to your golf swing to get some good results. So let's have a little look at my student Robin's swing here, really from transition and into the golf ball here on the Skillest analysis section. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at this, we're going to dissect it a little bit, and then we're going to get on camera again afterwards, and then we're going to talk about exactly the things we did to get this big change. So on the left-hand side here, this is the swing from before. So even though both outfits are very similar, look at the shoes a little bit differently. They are different times. I'll be way more impressed if this was in a single day, that's for certain, but let's have a little look here. So we can see on the left-hand side, we can see a very laid off shaft. So let's have a look at this swing from here with this very laid off shaft position. So we're going to see now how this shaft will start to steepen in transition. So we can see quite a steep movement. To make it even seem more so, let's get a line on the shaft angle at the top of the backswing and we'll get a shaft angle line in transition here. And that's how we can see the shaft has steepened here in transition. So we can see very laid off shaft, shaft getting very steep. So now we're going to see the body very much struggle to turn in the downswing. When it does turn and tries to get a little bit of rotation, that's just going to force the hands even more out in front. And of course, if the shaft is steepening and you're adding in rotation, that is going to tip that shaft over even more and you're going to end up cutting really across it, just like Robin is here with very little rotation. You're going to see how his arms have to extend going through that golf ball because its body is pulling up and back because it's not having the dynamic movement of turning. It is now extending instead to manage that steep shaft, something that we've always talked about in videos. And we can see, because the rotation isn't happening, a big flip, roll, release is happening. So we can see a lot of timing elements are taking place here, ultimately because of where we are at the top of the backswing. We can't shallow it from this laid off position here because that club will ultimately get far too shallow if we lay that off even more. We'll talk about that a little bit more on camera after this. So let's have a little look here at the other one on the right. So we can see straight away here that shaft angle is very different. It's now a little bit more down the line. So a little bit more of a down the line shaft angle. We can see a stronger club face position too. Now let's see how this club moves in transition with this different shaft angle. Now look at that. That is a big change of a shaft angle. You can see how this club has now pitched behind. So the center of mass of the club has pitched behind his body here, which is shallow in the golf club. So we can see a big difference happening here from the two videos here. So we can see now that shaft is shallow. We can see now the body's incentivized to really start to turn. You can see how he's almost crunching down. You can see how he's almost going into a lot of forward flexion, chest going down, pelvis going back, going into flexion instead of extension like we see here on the left-hand side. All being made possible by that shaft movement in the downswing. That's why we talk so much about on this channel about shallowing the golf club if you want to turn. And now it's just a free rein of that body wanting to turn through. Look at that nice bent right arm compared to the dead straight right arm here on the left. And then a good exit left of that club going around the body again. So main difference here, shaft angle, absolutely. So we can see now we've given his body and we've given his club room to be able to shallow. We're also seeing a little bit of left wrist flexion being adding in here. So we're seeing this left wrist go into flexion, where we see here on the left wrist go into extension and cup. So that's going to have a massive influence on the club shaft movement and also the club face. So we can see here something that we always talk about again, having your swing in a position to be able to do these good movements. Ultimately, in the simplest terms here, not in the right place to be able to rotate and shallow the shaft on the left. All you can do is steepen it, and then you're not going to rotate once you steepen it. And then here on the right hand side, we can see a great shaft angle at the top, and then the body really moves nicely. Shaft shallows, and that's a green light to be able to turn. So let's jump back on camera and talk about this a little bit more. So as we could see from that analysis section there was ultimately 3 things that we did to be able to get that club to shallow out and then rotate nicely. The first main one was the shaft positioning at the top of the backswing. So this was the most visually eye-catching part of it, was really Robin was far too laid off at the top, like I said. When he's really laid off there, that club is not going to want to continue to shallow, because when the club is that laid off and the club shallows even more, so the center of mass gets more behind me, then that club face is going to be wide open, and 2, the club is just going to be completely stuck behind me, to where then if I try to turn through the golf ball, it's just going to result in a really bad and often to the right golf shot. So that's why he would steepen the club, because it would get the club back so it was moving somewhat functionally, and I get that center of mass pitching in more of a manageable position for the body, so the body could still try to hit a functional golf shot. So first things first, shaft position needs to be in a good spot here. So we had it to more of a down the line shaft angle there, because then that gave him room to shallow the golf club and then functionally turn through the golf ball. So that was the main thing, shaft pitch. The second bit we did was adding in a little bit of left wrist flexion into that downswing. We did that to aid his shallowing move once we got that good position at the top, and also to keep the club face in a nice strong position. He'd have the tendency to miss it right at times, and adding in this little bit of left wrist flexion, bowing in other words, really helped us and enabled us to turn a little bit better through the golf ball. So once we had those 2 bits in there, our last little bit that finished it off quite nicely was really feeling like we're leaving the hands and arms up at the top of the swing here. So leaving the hands and arms up here whilst the rest of our body turned, pivoted, rotated in that golf swing. So you could see when I was doing that, I wasn't trying to shallow the shaft one bit, me just trying to leave the hands and arms up here whilst I was turning. See how it has an effect of a shallowing move on the golf club. So with us, with the club at the top of the backswing in a place where it can shallow and be fine. 2, with that left wrist flexion to make sure that when we were shallowing it, we weren't losing our good club face structure. So that's a good move to have into your golf swing there. So then it was just simply turning through that ball, really feeling good rotational movement through that golf ball there. And then that helped massively and really helped that position and Robin getting all those nice movements there. So really the lesson to be learned here for you watching at home is when you're trying to 1, shallow the golf club, and 2, rotate through the golf ball, does your golf swing support that type of movement? Does it support a nice shallowing move? Because we could see Robin at the start, certainly that swing there did not support a club shaft getting shallower in the downswing, and 2, rotating. It really wouldn't. So that's why when a lot of you say you're struggling with rotating and or shallowing, that's because your golf swing isn't in a spot where you can functionally do that and hit a good golf shot. So you can see the step process we went through, getting the club into a good spot to allow it to really shallow, making sure we had a mechanism in there via bowing the left wrist to keep the club face square, and then a feel to encourage the club to shallow even more and turning through. So let's say you're someone out there who has this quite laid off shaft at the top and you want to get it into a position where it allows you to rotate. We'll show you a good drill that we did to be able to really get in there. We did a very simple drill, really, really simple. There was no massive fancy thing that we did here, because oftentimes here guys, the simpler drill is the better one to do. We did a swing tracing drill that we used to do. Robin was very, very good at practicing at home. He practiced at home a lot. So what we did, we had an alignment stick and we gripped the alignment stick up the left-hand side of the golf club. So big amount of sticks all coming up here. So as we can see, when we swing back here, we can see where our shaft position is now, where our shaft angle and where our shaft orientation is pointing. So when, let's say you're someone like Robin, where you'd get up to the top and you would have a very laid off shaft, you can see this stick straight away pointing right in front of me here. So first thing we tried to do was get that stick pointing at the ground for as long as we could, get up to the top, and then at the top of the backswing, we want it pointing either directly behind us to combat the excessiveness of the laid off shaft. We wanted to feel maybe even slightly across the line, just as an extreme feel there, but ultimately having the stick pointed directly at the camera. And then as we started down, just practice that first little move here of getting that alignment stick to then point away from you. So pointing behind with our alignment stick to pointing away. We did that a lot. We did that a lot and a lot, and we started to implement a few little feels, especially with the bow in the left wrist. Can we still get that left wrist to bow whilst pointing away? Yep, we can still do that. Club face will be managed better. You'll shallow the shaft even more. So you're at home watching this, you want to get your golf swing into a good spot, grab this stick. Best drill to do when you're at home. But for really loads of reasons, loads of swing kind of issues you can do this with. So we want this stick pointing at the ground till we're getting up to around the top of our swing, then pointing a little bit behind us here. Now, we don't need to be with a down the line shaft. We can have it slightly laid off for sure, but not excessively. So we get it there, either pointing the stick behind or slightly away here, and then feeling like this stick is pointing in front of us. If you do a lot of repetitions, pointing behind, pointing in front, doing this a lot, and then as you're coming through, you can see how you can work on your rotational move by getting that stick to go around your body as you're coming down in a downswing. You can imagine if you do that a lot, guys, you're going to start to have some really good repetitions when you're at home. Practicing at home or practicing into a net like I've got here is ultimately probably the way that you can work on your golf swing and get the most accurate reps, creating an environment where you're not responding to a target and you can fully work on your body's movement there. So absolutely have this good stick drill here. It's the drill that we did, but really the takeaway from this, guys, is get your swing into a place where you can rotate and you can shallow the golf club. So absolutely, if you want to watch a video that is more about this, about shallowing the shaft, a bit of rotation, I'll put a card up here. And of course as well, I have a video guide all about rotation in the downswing called The Ultimate Guide to Rotation in the Downswing. And it is also on the app that we've just been talking about in this video, on Skillest, where I do all my online coaching, just like with this lesson here was done on Skillest. And when you go into my coaching profile, you'll see the button, online lesson. Next to that is a button called More. Click on that and you'll see online courses come up here. Click on that. And then there's the guide to ultimate rotation in the downswing. Everything you want to know, a coaching level of knowledge of rotation, shallowing the shaft is in there. You know, what can happen with a steep shaft, all the things we talked about in this lesson is in this course. So if you want to know more about that, more than welcome to go get it. So guys, also, if you want a lesson on Skillest, absolutely, you can contact me there on the app, on the Skillest app, and then we can get that online lesson journey started. So really you can see from here, from this video, it's an extremely powerful thing. Online lessons are extremely effective in being able to change your golf swing here. So something here for a little bit of context, which I hadn't mentioned at all in this video, is my student there, Robin, he'd only been, at the time, only been playing golf for a good handful of months. So that tells you, going from that to where we got him to, tells you how powerful online lessons can be. So if you've got a little bit of hesitance towards it, there's no need to be, because you can make some crazy good changes from that. So again, download that Skillest app, either whether you want to have a look at the course or you want to have an online lesson from me, contact me on there and we'll get it started. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, of course, click that like button. If you want more golf instruction just like this, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video. So get your club into a good spot, and then you'll find rotation and shallowing the shaft hell of a lot more effortlessly.